Welcome to the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel features a longtime Penn State media and NitWits tag team, Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror, and Mark Brennan of Lions 247 with Fight on State. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Peter Terpstra, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
Hello, welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime. I'm Peter Terpstra. As always, we are joined by the NitWits, Neil Rudell, Mark Brennan, former Penn State captain Mike Irwin. Folks, thanks for joining us. A lot to unpack in Penn State's latest loss, back-to-back losses. They lost to Michigan State 21-17. It seems like all of you guys have kind of taken a deeper look at this game. Mark, I'm going to start with you. What's your first thought? You haven't digested this. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I've on our message boards and in the stands and on the sideline at the end of the game, there's a lot of complaining about coaching. And listen, I understand that, but I think this was a game where whatever you say about the coaching, players have to make plays. I mean, guys were in position to put this game away for Penn State on several opportunities and just weren't able to come through. I hate to, I don't want to beat them up for that, but I also don't think you can lay it all on the coaches. And then if you look at the touchdowns that Penn State gave up in this game, every one of them, there were on the field mistakes that really led to them. And they weren't just, a missed tackle or something. It was a pattern of things that were happening. So I think sooner or later, the players have to be accountable for this. And they were after the game. Yeah. I mean, I give them credit. They were after the game.
If there's, and going along with that, you can't just look at one of those important mistakes because there are so many.
Well, I put this at the feet of the offense myself. I mean, I know there were some big defensive breakdowns in terms of their secondary, but to me, they still only allowed 21 points. In today's modern football, I think you got to win that game, especially when you have one of the most prolific offenses in the country. The passing game wasn't there. I'm not so quick to exonerate all the coaching. They're 6 of their last 31 in the last 2 games in third down conversions.
It's not the only thing.
Yeah, I just see some problems. Organization, it doesn't. The receivers aren't getting separation, and I think there's a whole myriad of things, a whole bunch of leaks that sprung in this game that are, I think, kind of alarming as they go forward.
The way I look at the last 5 games that they've lost, they've been ahead in the fourth quarter, and they failed to close the game out. So I blame it on the offense and the defense. I think they're both partly responsible. I mean, I think Penn State has to come up with a short yardage offense somewhere along the line, because time in and time out, when they have moved the ball at the end of the game, they haven't done a very good job of it. And then they turn it over to the defense, and I think that pass, as my brother-in-law would say, it's a Swiss cheese defense with all the holes in it, because they're passing. I mean, how they can let the team after team come down the field at the end of the game and score. I mean, so there's a lot of things that I think are wrong with the system right now.
You know what we saw, though? I mean, and I mentioned this in something I wrote, that early in the season, they were making all of these mistakes against teams they were so much better than that they were able to win. Even App State, I mean, they were fortunate to come back and win that game. And we were saying here on the show at the time, if they do this when against the better teams on the schedule, you're going to lose. And now guess what? You're playing the better teams on the schedule. No matter what you want to say about Michigan State, that is not a great Big Ten team, but that's a good, solid Big Ten team with an outstanding coach. And you cannot afford to screw up and make mistakes against that caliber of team, and they were doing it.
Yeah, I think we underestimated Michigan State. They came into the season ranked 11th, and then they lost a couple games.
Yeah.
But they still have very capable players there, and I think, showing up there, especially their defensive line, I think they kind of showed up our offensive line in the second half. The defense, we couldn't penetrate, or we couldn't move the ball very well, and running the ball is the second.
Well, I think teams have now, the best teams, the teams you're trying to be and beat, have decided, even though Ohio State let up 460 yards to Trace McSorley in the clutch in the fourth quarter, they weren't going to let him beat them. And I think you saw that with D'Antonio. What a great defensive coach that he is. What disappointed me is, and Mike says about a short yardage offense, short yardage passing game, the last three plays that they got when they got the ball back with about a minute 30 or minute 40 were runs. A couple of them, McSorley, Sanders wide, and where's the aggression that they talked about last year that they didn't have at Ohio State? They were going to still stay true to themselves. Well, I think that was missing.
But what is this telling you? They don't have confidence in their receivers. Outside of KJ Hamler and Freiermuth, who both guys have been. I mean, Hamler's been unbelievable. Yeah. They're veteran receivers who were supposed to be the guys who stepped up for Deshaun Hamilton, have not gotten it done. I mean, Jawan Johnson was targeted 3 times in that game. You're 6'4", 230 pounds. How could you only be targeted, get open? Or not, I guess he wasn't even open on some of them, but you're only targeted 3 times in that game. Well, these guys, it's time to start looking at some of the younger guys on the roster. I don't know if they don't block as well or what the deal is, but this has become a pattern.
Well, to me, Tompkins played pretty well up until this year. Johnson, there were a lot of high hopes for. He has not played well. But I think on offense, you're also seeing, you got 4 coaches there that are in new roles or new hires this year. And I think there's been some growing pains.
When it comes to the timing of the loss, back-to-back losses, that could be a trend, and we're definitely going to get more into that. Coming up next, it's becoming a theme for Penn State the last 2 years. Maybe not finishing games, maybe losing games back-to-back. We're going to get right into that. Coming up next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. We're here with the NitWits. All right, Michigan State gets down to the 1-yard line against Penn State. And things are looking great, right? They make the goal line stop in a situation you're thinking best case scenario, Michigan State's going to have to hit a field goal, then you get a personal foul called, new set of downs. It's just one of the many things that kind of went wrong, but is that a trend, or is that just a young guy making a mistake? What do you think?
Well, I think that was a guy eager. He just got moved to defense in the last couple of weeks, trying to, and exuberance, whatever. He made a mistake. I do think D'Antonio was going to go for it anyway, but still, it drained some momentum. I mean, this is a guy that faked a field goal and faked a punt. So he was playing to win the whole game and threw a halfback pass. So, but I think you're seeing a lot of little discipline, not off the field. I'm talking about pre-snap penalties, fumbling the ball in borderline calls in terms of, and maybe not even getting away with fumbling But there were a couple yesterday that they retained possession, but it was real close. Just a lot of little things like that.
Yeah, well, the other thing is Michigan State fumbled 4 times in that game,
Yeah.
and Penn State doesn't come away with any of them. I mean, this team has not been as good at generating turnovers as it needs to be. I mean, Garrett Taylor had a terrific interception, heads up, ends up returning it 37 yards,
And
but
it
then he
didn't hurt
dropped.
anything, right?
But then he drops one later. And then Amani, obviously, I mean, your heart goes out to the kid because, we don't want to beat him up, but he's a veteran guy. He's got to pull that in. These are the mistakes that they have to, you talk about penalties, mistakes. These are the things that they have to get past. And listen, when it's a young kid, C.J. Thorpe, you get it a little bit. Veteran guys, they got to do a little bit better than that.
You got to give credit to D'Antonio for taking a chance once in a while. I mean, when you look at Penn State, they don't take too many chances, but I mean, the fake punt in the beginning of the game where they got a first down,
Well,
the halfback pass right after that, and then the fake field goal
Coach did
pass
great.
down there. I mean, so
Tremendous
I don't
game.
think we'd see Penn State doing those same type of thing. In fact, when you look at Penn State, when we were down there, I think we had 1st and 6 to go for a touchdown on the 6-yard line, and Sanders ran to about the 3, and then they had 2 pass plays right after that. They threw that fade pass, which would be like a low percentage pass, but. And I sort of question taking a field goal there and not trying to score a touchdown. I mean,
Well, you had to get the lead, though, right?
Yeah, you have to get the lead, and you have to try to get your field goal kicker some sort of confidence, which brings up a whole nother, I mean, that's officially an issue at this point. I mean, again, a true freshman kid, you hate to be critical, but you have got, in that game, you have to make a 37-yard field goal.
Hey, he's missed 4 out of the last 7, and they're backing away from the 42-yarders that you may need. You needed it against Ohio State. You didn't take it. It's just sort of affecting the game. I also see you mentioned Amani. Amani's made some terrific interceptions these last couple years, spectacular interceptions. Clinched the App State game like that.
Yeah.
Johnson's made some spectacular plays. They need the routine plays,
That's
too.
a great point.
We're talking about, let's transition the offense here. So we talked about not a lot of deep balls were thrown by Penn State. How much of that was maybe Miles Sanders broke some long runs and they saw that maybe he had something going? But outside of those long runs, I'm not sure if he was getting his chunk yardage that he normally gets.
he made a great run on the 48-yarder.
That was an incredible run.
On the
He broke
78-yarder,
my
it was wide open. I mean,
Yeah.
they could have driven a truck through for the
There it
78-yarder.
goes.
But he did show a lot of speed on that play. But I mean,
quite
it was
enough.
wide open. There was
Yeah.
great blocking on that. But
Well, yeah, and the other 15 carries he got, though, he only got about 35 yards. So they did bust that play early. Slade came in, and he got 1 carry because Sanders was a little bit hurt. He limped off at one point. I'm not sure he was the same Sanders in the second half.
I would like to hear, and maybe on Tuesday James will address it, whether they weren't going deep because the coverage was so tight. We don't have the all 22 views that the coaches are able to look at tape-wise.
The Nitwits need that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
Okay, we'll talk to the powers that be.
We can't
get
even get a mug of water.
I'm not. I'm
Or
not
helmets.
sure. I know we talked about this a little bit, but I'm not sure. McSorley. What was I going to say? I lost the train of thought.
You were talking during the break
Oh.
about him with the deep ball because he
Yeah,
moves around.
because
so
I don't think he had enough time.
Yeah.
To throw the deep ball. I mean, Michigan State was putting a lot of pressure on him, and he's moving around like he normally does. He's not a pocket passer. He's normally moving around. So I think it was tough for him to throw the deep ball.
But
Mike,
he was slipping yesterday a couple times.
Oh, in a key
defenses
fourth
are
down.
closing in on
But one
him.
thing I would say, Mike, is when he's scrambling around, isn't it the responsibility of the receivers shouldn't they have more time to get open and freelance and do that sort of thing? We've seen that happen in other games, and that's why I'm saying these receivers, the veteran guys, have to step it up, and if they don't, they really are going to have to look
No,
younger.
don't get me wrong. I think McSorley's doing a good job avoiding a lot of that rush coming on him. But he's done that all year. He's not a pocket passer. He scrambles and he does a great job. I think, like Neil said earlier, this is probably the worst game McSorley had.
You had Hamler and Hippenhammer were the top 2 receivers yesterday with 5 and 3. So Hippenhammer did a nice job. Among the wideouts,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
I thought Hippenhammer came to the ball a couple times when McSorley kept his eyes, open down the field, and that might have been when they got the field goal.
Yeah.
How much of this was frustration, you think, kind of building on this team. I mean, you don't see that a lot. At least we haven't. Penn State's been good for a long time, but it seems like things compounded.
I think they let them hang around so long, and then they got a little desperate at the end. But I mean, we should have put them away much earlier in the game than we did. I mean, we gave them too many opportunities, and we made a lot of mistakes. We had a couple potential interceptions that were dropped by people too that would have changed the game.
James said that after they let them hang around, and as it was going, D'Antonio had that game right where he wanted it. Hey, they run 89 plays. Penn State runs 65. So there's not a lot of opportunities as when you get a typical game with the average number of plays.
One quick point before I'm sure we have to get to break, but Peter, I was down on the field, and when you went behind the sideline at the end of the game from one side to another, they did not seem tense whatsoever. I mean, guys seemed loose. It didn't seem like the moment was too big for them. So I don't think that there was a measure of tension overhang from the Ohio State game. I don't know if you got that sense too, but I was walking by and guys were laughing and they didn't seem like they were overwhelmed by it. It's just a matter of, on the field, obviously they have to pick it up. But I just didn't think they were, out of whack or anything like that on the sideline.
Well, he said they had the best practice of his tenure during the
Didn't really
opener last
translate.
week. Yeah.
Well, coming up next, the Penn State defense. We'll talk a little bit more about them becoming a little bit of frustration to evaluate. What is their identity? How can they find consistency? Next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and The Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to the show. So you saw a late collapse by the Penn State defense. Do you put any worth into the first three quarters? Or, I mean, it's kind of hard to think of that, but the young defense has shown flashes of good things happening. And then they've also shown the late collapses.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that there's positives. I mean, especially out of the Ohio State game. I mean, that defense was terrific for most of the game, but how do you get past the fact that they've given up game-winning drives against Ohio State and Michigan State, and by all rights probably should have given up a game-winning drive against App State as well. I mean, so it's great that you're playing that well for a major portion of the game, but they have to take a look at what they're doing late. And, listen, I don't know from an X's and O's standpoint what they should be doing, but it sure seems to me as if they're playing a lot of out of their base, a lot of nickel, a lot of dime in these late game situations. And that probably, I'm sure there's a reason for it. Pry is a very smart guy, but it's not working. And so at what point, maybe they just don't have that much confidence in their linebackers, I'm not sure.
Well, the other thing I think about is, it's great for the team to be substituting a lot of people, but I think they substitute too much. I don't think you let the guys get settled in there. They're running. You watch the pros. I mean, those guys are playing 60 minutes a game. I mean, or whatever it is.
45 guys active.
Yeah, and they have. Yeah. I mean, it's good from a team morale standpoint to play that many people. But do you have like 12 good defensive linemen that you can play, or there are 8 good ones? And I think you play the best players, and it might hold true for their defensive secondary too, because they keep running all these different people in there, and they're not getting settled in there.
That's a balancing act, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
they forced 10 punts. I mean, other than a couple breakdowns, but I agree. But I think it's that they not just Ohio State. They weren't fresh in the end. So
that's what I'm saying.
Did a lot
it's
of
a balancing act.
The balancing act. But what I think it's done is, I'm not sure they know who their best players are, or who needs to be there in real key situations. And when a team's coming up the field to win a game on you, that's a key situation. Yeah. And there were numbers there that people might not know who they were.
No, they were still rotating Micah Parsons and Koa Farmer on the last 2 defensive series.
Yeah.
And at some point, you got to commit to somebody. To me, I would go with the younger guy because I think he has more of an upside. But that is, when you're still not defining who's going to be in there late in the game, that's an issue.
But I go back to, the early 60s when you had no substitution.
Right.
I mean, you had
You
to play both ways. But all of a sudden,
Yes.
now you got TV
Uphill.
timeouts, and you got TV timeout. You're playing one way most of the time.
Yeah.
And I heard Jack Ham talking about they were on the field for 89 plays. I mean, I don't think the kids should be. They're in good shape, hopefully. I mean, and all the TV timeouts, you're constantly waiting. And
I know
so I don't
somebody-
think you have to keep.
There's
some
never
as
been a
much as
question
they do.
about whether you were tougher than these guys.
Yeah.
I know somebody from the Altoona Mirror who would disagree, who thought Kevin Givens was playing too much in that game.
He
I
had a
won't-
lot
I
of
won't say his
snaps.
I won't say who said that.
But I'll bet you-
Corey Geiger.
I bet you if you check with Givens, he's fresh. He doesn't feel like he's tired. I mean, they're probably more tired.
could take that up with Corey.
They're probably more tired running off and on the field, worried about staying on the field and just resting a little bit and playing.
coming after you,
Let's
Corey.
transition into some things we liked. Okay. But are we looking at the same things that we like week in and week out? As far as like Freiermuth has come on, KJ Hamler is always always great, but we didn't have a great game from McSorley, which we're not used to seeing.
I thought Garrett Taylor played a tremendous game
Yeah.
at safety, and he alertly knocked down. For as great a game as D'Antonio coached, I could not believe that he faked a field goal and threw the ball to a defensive end on his field goal unit. That just shocked me, and it almost cost him the game. But I thought Taylor played it real well.
I thought Etor Gross-Matos played a really good game too. He's starting to emerge. I mean, and he's the kind of guy that you could use him outside, or they put him inside sometimes on those specialty packages. And listen, I think you have to take into account how good this run defense was. I think the offensive line on a whole is getting better and better and better and better, and I think it's only going to get better as the season goes along. I'm not saying this was a perfect game for the O-line. It definitely could have done a better job late in the game, but to have a running back go off the way Sanders did, I think that speaks to some really good play at times by the O-line.
They still got 200 yards against
Yeah,
Michigan
that's
State.
right.
That was impressive. But the line, I think, is what you're counting on to make a couple first downs and put
That's
these
the next
games
step.
away.
This is becoming a veteran group. That is the next thing that it has to do.
And they're playing a good defensive line. I mean, Michigan State has a good defensive line. They were known for their defense. Now, they did lose a few people this year, but I still think the defensive line's intact with what they had.
When we think full picture, we kind of got to look ahead. What's left for Penn State next up? They got a road game against another Big Ten team that they just dominated. We'll get to that. Come on next.
The NitWits are brought to you by Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Hey, welcome back to the show. We're going to get right to it. Penn State traveling to Indiana for this next game. Prediction time. I'm going to say Penn State rolls this one. They're going to be mad. 37-14. Mike?
I'm going with Penn State also, and I'm going to predict 41-20 Penn State over Indiana.
I'll say 38-21.
Okay.
And I'll go 34-21. I think Penn State kind of sleepwalks early in games out there sometimes. So yeah, I'm going to squeeze Neil a little bit. Hey, no nitwit of the week this week because none of us got it right.
Yeah, they lost. It is what it is. All right, folks. Catch us next week on Nittany Nation Overtime. We'll see you after Indiana.
The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By Freedom RV. Get ready to tailgate this Penn State football season with Freedom RV Rentals. By Jethro's, serving ribs, steaks, Italian specialties, and the famous Prospector Salad since 1983. Takeouts, delivery, and catering. By Lucky's Beer Distributor. Let Lucky's Beer get you ready for PSU game day. By Remax Results Realty Group. Committed to a culture of professionalism, productivity, and exceptional service. By EasyToUse.com. Your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By Lions 247 with Fight on State, your online home for Penn State football and recruiting coverage. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.